All right, I'm currently on the line with David. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview sessions going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Okay, I'm David Hanners. I currently live in Manchester, England. I'm originally from rural East Central Illinois, a little town called Casey, population 2,400, home to the world's largest rocking chair, certified by Guinness. Seriously. And I play Americana music. I started playing in high school and then through college, and and then went to work.
Before we get too far into the weeds with that, we will definitely touch base on that. Let's go back a little further. Tell me about what music was like for you when you first encountered it. Like, what age were you when you kind of first identified that music was going to have a larger role in your life?
You know, I was thinking about this the other day, and the first musical memory I have, and I probably would have been 4 or 5, and it was sitting in my parents' car during one of my late brother's baseball games somewhere, and this song came on the radio. And of course, you know, at that age, I didn't know who it was, but you know, later I came to realize it was Johnny Cash, and that's the first song I really, or first musician, because I can't recall the song, but that's the first musician that I really remember leaving an impression with me. Growing up, I listened to Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jackson Brown, Neil Young, Poco, the Flying Burrito Brothers, John Stewart. I was actually, introduced, again, mentioning my late brother John. I was actually, he had like all the Kingston Trio records. So one of the members of the Kingston Trio at that time was a guy by the name of John Stewart, a great songwriter, and actually kind of one of the founding fathers, I suppose, of the whole Americana thing, although they didn't call it Americana then. But that was the kind of music I gravitated towards. But the first time I had an emotional reaction to a song, and I remember this very clearly, I was watching TV one night, and where we lived in Illinois, I mean, we got like 2 TV stations from Terre Haute. Sometimes we could pull in one of the public stations from like Champaign or something. And one night we were able to pull it in, and they had Steve Goodman on, and he did City of New Orleans. And that was the first song that I really connected with emotionally. I don't know why. Well, I have some ideas why. For one thing, he was, from Chicago, and I was from downstate Illinois. And he also wrote a good part of it at the Mattoon train station. His in-laws lived in Mattoon, which is a town about a 40-minute drive from my hometown. That was the first song that I really connected with emotionally, on an emotional level, and I decided, I taught myself how to play guitar because in high school I wasn't any good at sports. I wasn't any good at anything really. So I figured, if I was going to get dates, I had to learn to play the guitar or something.
Sure.
And yeah, well, any guy who tells you that, they want to learn to play the guitar because they want to express themselves artistically, they're lying. They want dates. Um, and my brother had gone off to college and had he left behind an old Stella guitar, old blonde Stella guitar, an inexpensive one that my parents had got him for Christmas one year. And I didn't know anything about the guitar much, except that Stephen Stills looked really cool holding his D28 on the cover of the first CSN album. And I thought, well, I want to do that. So I went up, again, it's a small town. So I went up to the pharmacy, which sells everything in a small town. And they sold Black Diamond guitar strings. So I bought guitar strings, strung it up. I got a book out of the library, the Glenn Campbell Guitar Method, and strung up the guitar. And the guitar did not have a pick guard, and I'm left-handed, and so I just started holding the guitar in the way that felt comfortable to me, which was upside down compared to normal, quote unquote, right-handed guitar players, and the strings were backwards too. If you're normally playing guitar, the bass strings are nearer the ceiling, the treble strings are nearer the floor, and I was holding it upside down and backwards. But I didn't know. I just looked at the chord diagrams in the book. Never learned to play like Glenn Campbell, I might add, but just looked at the chord diagrams in the book. And I remember the first song I ever taught myself to play was Stephen Stills' Change Partners, D, A, and E. So it was easy to learn. And from there, just things kind of expanded outward, and played in a couple of bands in high school, and played through college. And I went to India.
Let's talk a bit about the way that you learned to play guitar. So the method that you chose is definitely unconventional. Were you taking any sort of private lessons where they tried to like correct that, or did you kind of just roll with it and figure it all out on your own?
I just kind of rolled with it and went with it on my own. We had a small music store in town, and the guy who ran it, he would show me things from time to time. One of the things is, I was playing it for like several weeks or a couple of months before I knew I had it wrong. Before I knew I had it upside down, because like I said, the guitar didn't have a pick guard on it, so I didn't know it was upside down. And the guitar doesn't care how you hold it. It just cares where you put your fingers. And I was able to stick my fingers where they were supposed to be for certain chords. There are some chords that are a bit more difficult left-handed upside down than other chords, but then there are other chords that are kind of easier that way. So I just went with what I had. I have learned since that if you want to get an actual left-handed guitar that is strung like a right-handed guitar, yes, again with the bass strings towards the ceiling, the treble strings towards the floor. I mean, they generally cost extra. Not so much anymore these days. They cost about the same, but they're harder to find normally. And so, I can pick up about any guitar and play it. The one issue is for like most electric guitars, because where the tone and volume knobs are, particularly Fenders, I find myself turning myself down with the motion of my arm. Of course, it didn't bother Jimi Hendrix, but
Let's move that forward a little. You mentioned that at some point you did try to play with other people and put bands together. I I'm gonna take a shot in the dark and say, by the way you phrased that, you ended up kind of being a solo singer songwriter. But tell me a little bit about your experiences with trying to work with other musicians.
for the most part, it's been pretty good. I've always tried to play with musicians who are better than I am, which is not hard to do. Um, and I've had fairly good luck with that through life. But the thing is, I just I just don't like. I came to the conclusion I just don't like being in bands. Um, One is bands are a hassle. Everybody's got to be on the same page, which is okay if everybody is indeed on the same page. But in a band, everybody has their own agenda. It can be magic when it works. I've been in bands where it worked, and there's just no feeling like it. But you have to arrange. We when I was lived when I lived in St. Paul, I was in a rock band, the Ballet School Troublemakers. The name came to me in a dream. And we had a great time. It was a lot of fun, but we were only a four-piece, and juggling everybody's schedule for rehearsal was just. I just kind of got fed up with it. And then when you go looking for gigs, you got to make sure everybody's available on that night. And I just kind of came to the conclusion that. That I like just being able to show up by myself. Now, I have played, for example, here in Manchester. I've been accompanied by a couple of different violin players, actually about three different violin players, and a couple of other accompanists. Um, but I I realized one of the things about myself was I would just rather worry about me than having to worry about someone else.
Sure, that's completely valid. For the sake of completeness, did you end up moving over to England for a musical reason, or you were just curious and wanted to explore a little?
Um, the I'll try to make it as short as possible, which might be difficult. My wife taught internationally for a time, so in 2014 we sold. We were living in St. Paul, Minnesota. We sold everything. I took a buyout at the paper I was working at, and we moved to Kuwait. We lived in Kuwait for 5 years. I actually played some gigs in Kuwait, which is a whole other story. So 5 years there. We spent 2 years in Cyprus, in Nicosia, played a little there, came back to the US for like 6 months. And then I have dual citizenship, my dual US UK citizenship. My mother was a war bride. So I'm able to, live in either country and pay taxes in both. But we, I was retired, and my wife was doing some spot teaching here and there. But the thing is, her oldest son and his wife and the three grandkids who were born in Kuwait, they now live in Manchester. So she wanted to be close uh, to the grandkids, which was okay with me. And so we moved here, and I actually really like it. I mean, Manchester is considered the music capital of the UK, and there's just a lot of music here and some very good musicians. And there are a lot of opportunities to play. Um and so I've really enjoyed it. I keep saying I would rather live on the coast and somewhere more scenic because Manchester is a big city. But we enjoy it here. I have no complaints really about the music that I've been able to play here. I haven't written any English songs yet. All my songs are still about US stuff because I consider myself an Americana artist. I don't think there's a British Icona or whatever the term would be. But
Well, so that kind of brings us up to what you are working on. Tell me a bit about the projects that you have going, and what you kind of want to see come from those.
um, well, in April, I released an EP called Llano Estacado. And I did it with a buddy of mine from back in the Twin Cities, a guy by the name of Kevin Cadidlo, very talented musician, guitar player. And I was just actually going to just record a solo EP. And they were going to be songs all taking place on the Llano Estacado, which is an area of the Texas Panhandle. And I found a local guy, who had a studio and wanted to record me. So I said, sure. Went in, just did me and me on vocals and guitar, and that was it. And that was all I was planning to do, to release. But I sent the files to a few buddies back in the U.S. Just to get their impressions, their thoughts on the recording quality, and because I don't have a good ear for that kind of stuff, and so I sent it to a few guys, a few friends, just to get their take on whether they thought the sound quality was good, what they thought about the songs, blah blah blah. And one of them, again, Kevin Cadillo, again, I knew from, he was in a different band in the Twin Cities, and our bands were on a couple of bills together. He just took it on his own and recorded, some guitar parts, some really sizzling guitar parts to a couple of songs, and just for the heck of it, and send them back. And Kuba Lewandowski, the engineer on the EP, he and I were just floored by what Kevin added. I mean, they just elevated the song so much. And this is where I do miss the band, I guess. But they really elevated the song. So we wound up. I would record the stuff here. Kuba would send them to Kevin. Kevin would add his stuff, send them back to Kuba. Kuba would do all the, mixing and mastering. And that was how we wound up with Llano Estacado, the EP. It's got 6 songs on it. We're currently doing a Llano Estacado Volume 2. We're almost done with that. When we're done with that, I want to do an EP or longer if I decide to do it longer, of songs from like my native area of Illinois, East Central Illinois, and I've got a bunch of songs for that, and it's just kind of figuring out which songs to be on it. Now, and that one I may do solo. I may just do me and my guitar. But I got a guitar that I want to use on it. It's a Stella. It's kind of like the one that I learned to play on, that I taught myself to play on. I found one in good condition, and a luthier repairman here in Manchester by the name of Jim Fleeting just did some wonderful work on it. And I got it kind of as a as a nostalgic lark, but it's actually a very nice sounding guitar, particularly for a ladder braced guitar. And with it's got a nice pickup in it, and I've actually gigged with it a few times. It's an old guitar, it's built in Chicago in the fall of 1954. Um, so it's kind of held up well for its age. And I was thinking of naming the EP Stella, just for the heck of it. Yeah. Um, and so that's one thing I want to do. I've also, I've played a lot of the showcases around town and whatnot. And I've been trying to get some more, some gigs, support slots, opening for touring acts. And so far I've only done one of those. There was a guy out of Nashville, signed to Sony Nashville, a guy by the name of, I think, Tyler Booth, who was playing here in town, and I got tapped to open for him, and that was a lot of fun, So I'd like to do more of it, but I really have no complaints.
All right. Well, so with the material that you're putting out and you are out there getting shows, where can people find you and follow along with you?
Well, I have a website, davidhannersmusic.com. My schedule is also on bandsintown.com. If you just look up my name, we're redoing my website right now, and we haven't figured out how to make the calendar work on it. So the website has a lot of biographical information, and it has links to, where you can get Yano Estacado, and it's got all the stuff, websites typically have. It just doesn't have a working calendar. So for a calendar, you kind of need to go to Bands in Town. I'm told that's going to be fixed soon, though. And I'm on Instagram, dhanners55, on Facebook, just David Hanners. I don't do as much social media as I probably should, because it kind of goes against my folk sensibilities. Yeah, and I try to imagine, would Woody Guthrie embrace things like Facebook? And the fact is, he probably would, because he was really into that kind of thing. I just have I don't do TikTok, and I'm happy with what I got so far.
All right. Well, so I always like to give the people I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So what's a message that you have that you would want to share with other people?
The message that I have is you just got to be nice to one another. I think, at least in the U.S., we kind of have lost a sense of community, and we need to get back to it. And I think music can help in that regard. And I would just like to see a return to that. I see it. I see it in the UK, and I have no idea. I haven't figured out fully, the difference between why I kind of see it here, but didn't see it in the US. And I think the US is just, so politically polarized these days that it's hard for people to see beyond that, but you got to, because, the current situation isn't going to last forever, hopefully. And we have to work together. We have to realize that, compromise is not a dirty word, that it's how we progress as a society. So that starts at home. That starts with us individually. So that's my message.